Good morning, everybody. We're going to talk about the tropics and the Atlantic. Got a kind of a complex forecast evolving with our two systems here, now TD9 and Hurricane Humberto, both over the Southwest Atlantic, and they're going to be influencing each other pretty much, potentially. So you do a wide satellite, you can see way up here in the Northeast we have the remnants of Gabrielle. Then our strongest storm right now is Hurricane Humberto, strong Category 4. Slowly moving off to the west-northwest here to the south of Bermuda. And then the one that's been of a lot of interest for impacts we've been tracking for days is now TD9. Here just north of Cuba, kind of moving up through the Bahamas. Like we'll talk about, maybe a little bit south of where it was anticipated to be, but generally the forecast is on track in the short term, but very complicated long term. So you look at the upper level winds around these. A few features to note: you can see a pretty healthy outflow from Humberto. Dual outflow channels into an upper level low to the east, and then you kind of have this upper level high to the north, and so very healthy outflow with these dual channels. Almost kind of reminds you of like Hurricane Dorian and some of these strong storms that really took advantage of outflow in this part of the basin. For TD9 now, you can see it's starting to develop some nice anticyclonic outflow aloft. There's this trough dipping into the southern U.S. And that's influencing it a little bit. So that will be bringing some southerly shear and also helping to kind of pick this up and pull it to the north. And so another way to look at that is with this 200 millibar analysis from this morning. A couple features. Again, there's that big trough dip in the jet stream that's going to be helping to pull this up. And some models had shown that this might bring it into the southern U.S., but it's kind of also, as we'll see, maybe trending a little bit weaker. The other feature is there's this real subtle narrow trough over the Florida Straits, and that's part of why this is going to turn before Florida. Earlier, some ensemble members had suggested that you might get a track something maybe up into the Straits or the Southern Gulf before curving, but because this trough is here, it's going to kind of provide a wall right along the east coast of Florida. So as we'll see, this make it close enough for some minor impacts along the east coast of Florida, but shouldn't make a landfall because of that. So now we look at our individual storms. Humberto, again, just a very powerful symmetric CDO, central dense overcast here, and very healthy. Could become a Cat 5 later today. I think we have recon tomorrow, so we'll see how strong this can get. Now looking at PTC 9L, it's a depression as of 11 a.m. You can see you have this convection firing. The hurricane hunters, I'll show that in a minute, they found a center kind of down here. Remember yesterday, before, some of the models are kind of showing that the center would maybe form more up here, and so far that hasn't happened. So, it's maybe gotten a little bit further west than anticipated. I think we still may see a jump a little bit to the north at some point, but again, we've kind of had that southerly and slower trend, and it's important for the forecast, as we'll show in a minute. But this is the Hurricane Hunter data from the NOAA Hurricane Hunter. You can see that they did find a closed circulation here, flight level, and 1,005, 1,006, 1,007 millibars, so enough to classify as a tropical depression. So now we can look at the forecast. So here's that vorticity. You can see it kind of does show it moving up, just east of Andros Island, and then getting pulled up to the northeast. You can see now here we have where the potential interaction or Fujiwara with Humberto comes in, because what's happening is, let me go to upper level vorticity. You can see this a little bit better. You have this trough, this upper level trough here to the west, and you have Humberto to the east. So this trough is trying to pick it up and kind of pull it in here. Humberto's circulation is pulling it this way, and so you kind of had these competing influences. And earlier runs where the storm, where 09 was faster, if it was faster, it was able to get pulled in. But because it's trended a little slower, a little further west, and also as we'll see here, if you go back a few runs, look how much. If you go kind of look up in this region. And we'll look over the last few runs. Look how much stronger the trough was a few runs ago. Look how much weaker it is now. So the combination of a storm that's slower and a trough that's weaker means that this isn't going to get pulled north as quickly. And so now that's going to give Humberto time to catch up and exert that influence on it. And so as a result, you can see if we go out the rest of the run, basically it gets a little bit close to the coast, but then gets pulled out east. In terms of the moisture, you can see as that trough, it kind of wraps around. There is some dry air that gets in. The last GFS actually gets pretty strong, though. So we'll have to see if it does stay offshore. We'll have to see how much strengthening can happen. ECMWF is again a very similar story, moving up through the Bahamas, intensifying, maybe a little bit closer to the coast, and then compared to yesterday, it is stalling offshore before eventually decaying. You can see here though that it doesn't accelerate out as east as quickly as the GFS. It kind of just hangs out, and that's really a possibility. You know, you could see it come up to the coast still. It could shoot out east quickly, or it could just kind of come up here, maybe hang out for a little bit. So still a lot of uncertainty in that. And if we look at the vortex structure, this is from the HAFS multi-storm version that we were running. I'll show the. Let's go look at the outer nest first, because the multi-storm HAFS that we have with two multiple moving nests in the same large outer domain should be really good for this kind of multi-storm situation. So you can see it has our two systems moving through the Southwest Atlantic, and this particular run keeps it offshore, so that's something interesting to watch. It had been bringing it inland. Looks like, you know, because it's about category 1, 2. This particular run seems to kind of follow the GFS in bringing it east. But if you go look, we're going to go look now at some vortex structure, because that's the nice thing about HAFS. It allows you to, this version, it allows you to look at both inner and outer core stuff. So if you look at, for example, the vortex tilt, by looking at the centers, you can see that early on it's pretty tilted. You kind of have your low level center to the south, your upper level, mid level centers to the north. Because of that southerly shear, it does try to get aligned a little bit, but kind of going to be battling that shear throughout. But one thing to note is that the wind gusts with this could expand as it interacts with the trough. So even though it's probably going to pass well off the east coast of Florida, you kind of do see these tropical storm force wind gusts, 35, 40 miles an hour, kind of impinging on the east coast, and as a result, the NHC has put up a tropical storm watch. So could see some gusty winds along the east coast, the Space Coast there, even as the storm passes offshore. But dry air will certainly be an issue. You could see some of these intrusions of dry air on the upshear or southerly side, and so that could limit intensification for a while, as HAFS shows. If you look at the trends, like I said, you can see that the storm has kind of trended southwest of where GFS had it. You know, the GFS was kind of insistent it would kind of form the eastern Bahamas, move faster into South Carolina, but the trend has been slower. That trough is weaker, like I said, and so the system's been trending a little bit west, and as a result, moves slower and may get picked up by Humberto circulation. But again, we'll have to see. ECMWF's trend is kind of the same idea. Some of the HAFS runs, you can see kind of the same idea as well. So very tricky forecast. If you look at the guidance, you can see this is a bunch of hurricane models. So you can see, you have HWRF, HAFS, HMON. So HMON is actually still bringing it inland. Some of the HAFS versions, like our experimental HAFS-B, is stalling it offshore. Operational HAFS-B and GFS and the experimental HAFS-A are kind of following up to sea, but it could really do any of these possibilities still. There's just a ton of uncertainty because of these competing factors. And ensembles illustrate that. This is the EC ensemble. You can see some of them do bring it to the coast and install it or bring it inland. Probably a majority now do turn offshore, but again, that speed of the recurve and whether it gets fully picked up is hard to say. And lastly, we'll look at the Google DeepMind, because these AI models have been interesting to follow along. And you can kind of see the same idea compared to yesterday. I think there's fewer bringing it to the coast. Again, a majority recurve, but you'll notice you can see some, kind of loop it back this way, get caught here. Some are faster out to sea. So there's just a ton of spread still and a ton of uncertainty. So as the vortex gets better established and as we can see exactly how close it gets to Humberto, hopefully we'll be able to lock in on the forecast a little bit better. So just keep, if you live along the coast of the Carolinas, I know it's frustrating because you might have to prepare and for a storm that doesn't even come, even down into Georgia here, but certainly if it gets close enough, if it stalls offshore, you could still have this cyclonic flow bringing a lot of coastal flooding and rainfall along the coast. So be prepared this weekend, and hopefully this will stay far enough offshore to avoid any impacts. But just stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center and your local officials, and be ready to make any preparations that you need to. And just have a great rest of your weekend and stay safe, everybody.